All right. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. I'm Mr. Pisto, and we are back again with another MTG Arena Brawl deck tech. This time we are in the Orzhov guild, and we are featuring Orah, Skyclave Hierophant. Basically, in some ways, cleric tribal with some role players along with us. Orah is a 3/3 core cleric with lifelink. Whenever he or another cleric you control dies, return a cleric card with lesser converted mana cost from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we're playing a suite of clerics. Archfiend's Vessel is a 1/1 for 1 human cleric with lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, exile it. If you do, create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying, so you're bringing it back as a 5/5. Hallowed Priest, every time you gain life you put a 1/1 counter on it. It is a 2 mana 1/1 human cleric. Impassioned Orator, it's a human cleric. It's a 2/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So there's a small life gain sub theme to this deck. Luminarch Aspirant, at the beginning of combat, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. It is also a 1/1 human cleric. Null Priest of Oblivion, it is a 2 mana 2/1 vampire cleric with menace and lifelink, and you can pay a black and 3 as a kicker, and you can return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Cleric of Life's Bond, whenever another cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life, and whenever you gain a life for the first time each turn, put a 1/1 counter on Cleric of Life's Bond, so it can grow with the other creatures. Then we have the Core Celebrant. It is a 3 mana 1/4 core cleric, and whenever Core Celebrant or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Life gain. When Duskfang Mentor, it's a 3 mana 1/3, enters the battlefield, put a lifelink counter on target non-human creature you control, and you can pay 1 and a black to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with lifelink. So quite a few of the creatures have lifelink, and those that don't have lifelink, you can turn them into a lifelinker with the Duskfang Mentor. Torbak's Hope Demise is a 3 mana 2/2 flying demon cleric legendary creature, and it has lifelink as long as it has 5 or more 1/1 counters on it. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a 1/1 counter on it. If that creature was a cleric, you may draw a card, and if you do, lose 1 life. Vito Thorn of Dusk Rose is a 3 mana 1/3 vampire cleric. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So with all the life gain in there, you can deal double damage, or you can block something and deal damage, and then you can pay 2 black and 3 colorless to give all your creatures lifelink until the end of turn. You have Mangara the Diplomat. He's a 4 mana 2/4 human cleric with lifelink. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or a planeswalker you control, draw a card. Whenever your opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. So it's a nice little draw engine, and it in some ways can slow your opponent down if they don't want you to draw things. Victory's Envoy, a 5 mana 3/3 human cleric. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So you're gaining, you're growing your creatures. Drana the Last Blood Chief is a 5 mana 4/4 flying vampire cleric. Whenever Drana the Last Blood Chief attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary card in your graveyard. You can return it to the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. The creature is a vampire in addition to its other types, so it reanimates every time it attacks. And the last cleric is Scion of the Swarm. It's a 5 mana 3/3 flyer. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on Scion of the Swarm. So at some point I had to put a cap on the converted mana cost, so 5 is the highest, obviously 1 being the lowest for my clerics in the deck. And that's our little bit of a cleric suite. Now we have a few non-cleric creatures that join the cast. Charming Prince, being able to scry 2 or gain 3 life or exile another target creature and return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. It's just a very good, generic, well-rounded creature. It's a 2-mana 2/2 human noble. Daxos, Blessed of the Sun, is a legendary enchantment creature demigod, and his toughness is equal to your devotion to white. So on base, he's a 2/2. And whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain a life. So it's triggering the life gain. One of the big payoffs is actually one of the monocolored commanders that we featured on this channel. Heliod Suncrowned. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, he isn't a creature. So more often than not, he's not going to be a creature. But the ability to give something lifelink, and whenever you gain a life, put a 1/1 counter on a creature or enchantment, is very, very helpful. Basari's Lieutenant has vigilance and protection from multicolored. When Basari's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever Basari's Lieutenant or another creature you control dies, if it had a 1/1 counter on it, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. So it plays very well with Victory's Envoy and all the other things that do 1/1 counters. We have the Luminous Broodmoth. It's a 3/4 flyer for 4 mana, and whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. So when your creature dies, it basically gives it a second life, but it's flying. Very useful, very handy, especially in a deck where you're looking to have creatures die, because you want your clerics to die. You can return others. Then we have Arabos Bleak Hearted. It is another enchantment creature, and more often than not, your devotion is going to be less than 5, so he's going to be an enchantment. And whenever a creature you control dies, you can pay 2 life. So with the life gain that you're gaining, you can pay life to draw cards when things die. You can also sacrifice another creature by playing a black and a colorless, and get target creature to have -2/-1 until end of turn. So you can play with combat, kill little things. Overall is a very diverse card. Now we get into the removal suite. Feed the Swarm. White has non-creature enchantment removal. I like this because it hits enchantments and creatures. It's kind of a toss-up between this and Disenchant. Might play around with that in the future. Heartless Act, destroying a creature with no counters or removing up to 3 counters from target creature. You can kill something, or you can play around with combat and make it a nightmare for your opponent. Banishing Light. Enters the battlefield, exile an online permanent an opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. Your stereotypical white style of removal. Elspeth's Nightmare. You get to destroy a little thing with power 2 or less. You get to take a card from an opponent's hand, a non-creature, non-land card, and then you can exile their graveyard. So it's a multi-faceted card that does a lot of things well. Your typical murder, black removal, 2 black and a colorless, destroy a creature. Murderous Rider has Swift End, which is an instant that destroys target creature or planeswalker. Lose 2 life, but then it's also a creature that is a 2/3 with lifelink, and whenever it dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. Faith's Fetters. For 4 mana, you enchant a permanent. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. An enchanted permanent can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So you can put this on a planeswalker to stop a planeswalker. You can put this on a creature to stop it from obviously attacking or blocking. It does many things and is very versatile. Eat to Extinction is a 4 mana instant that exiles a creature or a planeswalker. And you can look at the top card of your library, and if you want to, you can put it in your graveyard. And we have a planeswalker, Liliana, Walker of the Dead. 4 mana for a 4 loyalty Liliana Planeswalker. +1, each player discards a card. Each opponent who can't loses 3 life. So you can discard one of your smaller clerics to reanimate it later in the game. It's in this pile because of its -3 ability. Its target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. So you can kill something with this Liliana. You can strip them a card from their hand. It does many things. And then this -7, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and it gains haste. So if you can get it to 7, it's a pretty challenging thing to deal with. We have another Saga enchantment. We had Elspeth's Nightmare. Now we have Elspeth Who Conquers Death. It's a 5 mana enchantment where step 1, exile target permanent an opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or less. Step 2, non-creature spells opponents cast cost 2 more to cast until your next turn. And then step 3 is return target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a 1/1 counter on it or a loyalty counter on it. So it does lots and lots of different things. We have Arabos' Intervention. It's kind of a 2-trick pony, or 3 in some ways you could say. Gives a creature -X/-X until end of turn, and you gain life. So it's kind of 2 tricks in 1. And you can exile twice X target cards from graveyards. So you're playing against another Reanimator deck. You can wipe their graveyard. You need to kill something of a varying size. You can do that. We have 2 hand disruption spells. Agonizing Remorse. You can choose a non-land card from it, and that player exiles it. You lose a life. And also hits graveyards. That's important to notice that I always forget. We have Palaka Predation. It can be a land that comes into play tapped. Or also you can choose a card of converted mana cost 3 or greater that an opponent has in their hand and force them to discard it. Then we have some other non-creature spells that don't really fit into these other categories. Basari Ket, 1/1 counter, so it fits with Basari's Emissary, or Basari's Lieutenant, I should say, very well. That creature gains indestructible. It's a 3 mana, 3 loyalty Basari Planeswalker. Its -2 is whenever one or more non-token creatures attack this turn, create that many 1/1 soldier creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. And its -6 is win the game. You get an emblem at the beginning of your combat on your turn, create a 1/1 white creature soldier token, then put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So if you can protect either of the planeswalkers that are in this deck, they can come out on top for you. With Grim Tutor, basically 3 mana, search your library, lose 3 life, can find you any card, makes the card cost 3 extra mana, but I think that cost is worth it in a format that has very little card selection from the deck. Felida Retreat is a very versatile enchantment. You can, whenever a land enters the battlefield, you either get a 2/2 white creature token, or you can put a 1/1 counter on each creature, and those creatures gain vigilance until the end of turn. Emery's Call, it can come into play as Emery's Shattered Skyclave to produce a white mana. If you pay 3 life, it'll be untapped. And you can pay 7, have 2 4/4 white angel warrior creature tokens with flying. And on the same turn, non-angel creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of turn. We have Heliod's Intervention. Choose 1, destroy target artifacts and or enchantments, and target player gains twice X life. So rather than playing Disenchant, I'm playing Feed the Swarm, and also this card. I'm gonna give it a try in this deck, and for 1 extra mana, you are doing the same thing as Disenchant, but for 2 extra mana, you're getting 2. For 2 extra mana, you're getting 3. So I think it is worth trying. And last one, Agadeem the Undercrypt is a black land that comes into play untapped if you pay 3 life, or you can pay 3 and X to return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that each have a different converted mana cost, X or less. So normally in this deck you're getting a 2 and a 3, so it's best on 6 mana. That's probably the sweet spot. You very rarely getting your 1 because there's only 1 4, and there's 3 5s. So you're more than likely going to be getting a 2 and a 3 drop back. So paying 6 mana for 2 creatures is pretty good. Then we have 15 basics. We have the Bright Client Pathway and the Grim Client Pathway. We have the Scoured Barrens, Temple of Silence, Command Tower, and Fabled Passage. So this is my version of Orah Skyclave Hierophant. You enjoyed the deck, or think that there is any improvements or different cards that you think I should include, feel free to comment below. If you liked what you saw, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so that you can see more of the MTG Arena Brawl deck text and gameplay. Alright, if you want to see the games and it's not in the card or it's not in the suggestions, take a look in the description below, and also the cards that are at the end of this video. All right, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. Bye bye for now.